Okay, so Project Daedalus. So Project Daedalus was a Nesta-funded project which was done between the University of Salford, Abandoned Normal Devices, who are based in Manchester, who are a digital arts company, and they run a festival, also digital arts, and also Marshmallow Laser Feast, who are a London-based technology company. And I worked as a creative producer for Abandoned Normal Devices, but also as a researcher in environmental life sciences at the University of Salford. And both of those roles were on Project Daedalus. So Project Daedalus was all about, and still is all about, I guess, the application of drone technology in the arts. So how can we use drone technology in creative ways to communicate in different ways, tell stories, for example. Now, Abandoned Normal Devices are primarily about new cinema and digital cinema, so you'll see that there's quite a strong focus on cinema. So, as I said, I'm going to communicate via video, so I'm going to show you the Project Daedalus video to start with.
Perception of drones right now is through the military use of drones. Drone means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. What do you use drones for? How do you use them so that they're more beneficial to society?
Project Daedalus explores the creative potential of drones. We're interested in trying to give guidance to arts organisations and artists, producers, curators on how they might use drone technology within their productions.
It's about repurposing drones for creative use. It's for cultural organisations to think about how they can expand their audiences and also think about immersive storytelling environments.
Artists have been using them or thinking about how drones can be used in a creative context for a long time.
Either as dancers, as props, as actors, they're able to hold cameras within them that can capture amazing footage. Drones are one of the most interesting objects to use for 360 filmmaking because they just have a perspective that we haven't had before.
I guess it's the closest thing to flying itself.
Well, within this project, what we're looking at is how it can be paired with camera technology or virtual reality.
The unique aspect of using a 360-degree camera is allowing a whole audience to experience a particular view and to move around in this environment.
You create virtual reality experiences, taking people to new places, for example, above the forest.
So the technology side has been looking at 360-degree filmmaking, and then the other side of it is this wider context. We've been working with people in schools and nearly crashed it, but it's alright after a while and you got used to it. And we also work with a group of adults with learning difficulties.
With Abandoned Normal Devices come SEALs, introducing the group to drone technology.
It is a helicopter, a bit like a helicopter.
It's actually your base station. If you look at the group and how they've responded, everyone's had a great time.
One of the main outcomes is the toolkit, and that's targeted at cultural organisations and thinking about how they might access the technology and the things they might need to think about if they wanted to produce a project.
Expanding audiences, thinking about how you can use drones to engage audiences online as well.
The one-on-one contact with technologists, producers is really useful.
Drones are a hot topic right now.
I think at this point people haven't really figured out all the possibilities. So that era of flying robots amongst us that science fiction writers have imagined for decades is just around the corner.
Okay, so hopefully that will have given you a bit more of an overview of what Project Daedalus has done. And so obviously you can get onto the toolkit online. I guess from your guys' perspective, as more from the engineering side of things, then you'll be interested in things like GitHub and the coding that's behind things like how to build the 360 rig from the drone, or how to hook up your 360-degree camera and how to put imagery together from different GoPros to create a 360 film. That's probably the side you might be more interested in. But from the same point of view as somebody in environmental life science, things like, because you'll be talking about doing like field work, I'm assuming. So there's things like how to do risk assessment and stuff like that, really boring stuff, but stuff you have to do in order to do these things. So you wouldn't believe the amount of levels of pain I've gone through doing risk assessments for drone-related events over the past year. But I've shared it all on the Project Daedalus website, and so there's like a 101 guide to risk assessing for taking drones outside and things like that. So I know a lot about how to do that. Okay, so when I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you guys, I really kind of took the title to heart, so bringing this drones to people thing. So I thought I'd share with you a bunch of videos from the different, more outreach end of things that we've been doing over the past year. So I'm gonna kind of go from the youngest to the oldest / professional in terms of the videos and sharing with you, and they vary in length from about 30 seconds onwards. So I let a bunch of 9, 10 and 11-year-olds loose with some 50 quid drones from Metropolitan, and this is the result of one of their films titled The Barrel Roll of Doom. If we can get it open. Interestingly, it's not opening.
Try the QuickTime windows down on the bottom on the taskbar.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I did try and get them up before. Ah, yeah.
Lately, I've been losing sleep, dreaming about the future. All he's got to do is try to survive. No capture, no nothing. He's destroyed, has been flying so far. He's lost control. Oh, good no! It's going down, and try and capture it. Something's going to be so everything.
Let the credits roll out there. So yeah, that was the Barrel Roll of Doom, and that was up in Cumbria. It's a really small school, so there are only about 20 kids in the class, and it's year 5 and 6. And so we taught them how to pilot. And we're like, okay, you're going to shoot a movie now, and it needs to be, how do you imagine your school in the future if it's overrun with drones? And that's what they came up with. So like I said, creative application of drone technology, and it just goes to show how super accessible it's becoming. You can just give them to some 9, 10-year-olds under supervision and let them loose. So you saw a little bit of how this was working in that intro video that I showed, and so we were interested in working with girls in a high school. So this is St Ambrose Barlow, which is in Salford, and this is one of the films that they produced, and they weren't given a brief, they chose their own theme to work with and their own narrative. Me, Dad? So the vision here was some kind of Terminator drone will kill everybody, and 1,000 years later is the only one left. They're really quite dark, these teenagers. And to give you a little context, they had 2 hours from me arriving and telling them about Project Daedalus, giving them drones and giving them a very basic, this is how you use a drone, through to the entire edit process. So I think it's really impressive that I asked them to come up with a 10-second sting, and they came up with a 1 minute, 10-second thing with a narrative. So I was quite impressed by what they came up with in the space of 2 hours, having never used a drone before. Okay, so this one So this one was shot in Denmark, and it was part of a 10-day residency that I did working with different arts professionals, and the majority of them were performing artists. So this is a circus acrobat and a professional dancer. And we had a day shooting in a national park in Denmark, and they constructed a choreography around a tree, and then I shot it with a drone. It's just one of these really cheap mini drones that's about this big, that is very vulnerable to the wind. But anyway, this is the result of a very quick collaboration.
Well, I was walking around on Sunday morning. A summer breeze was in the dawn. And those smells of summer smelled great to me. Those are the kind of smells that I wait all year for. Summer is so beautiful to me. I love it all. Listen to this summer morning. Those big trees up there by the side of the road, they're lining the road. The sun is coming up over them. And those trees are dark and cool still. The ground's still wet. The smell of pollen and flowers. And the breeze is so neat, so sweet. Bees buzzing. Flies not yet flying. Well, the little nits knitting and gnats napping.
Okay, so I thought I'd end with the professionals rather than the kind of outreach side of things. So in the intro video, you'll have noticed we talked a lot about using drones to shoot 360 video, and you'll have seen them in a forest, and you saw that kind of big globe 360 forest thing going on. So this, what I'm going to show you now, is obviously not literally the results of the piece, because I don't have VR headsets for you all, but I can show you the teaser that went with it. So this is In the Eyes of the Animal, which was made from the research and development on Project Daedalus by Marshmallow Laserfeast, the technology partner, commissioned by Amanda Normal Devices, obviously the arts partner. And if you imagine like a forest glen, so you're in Cumbria and you're in the forest and you walk along, and hanging from the tree is almost like an old-fashioned diver's headset. And you've put this on and it's a big spear, and then onto your back is strapped a backpack, and the backpack vibrates every so often. And the idea of In the Eyes of the Animal is that you're seeing the worldview of 4 different animals, and this has been animated on top of scanning and footage that we took with the drones in 360 in the forest. So I'll show it you here, and then you'll see a bit of the context at the end of the film also. Imagine if you have the headset on here, you can look around and explore the surroundings. If you're just not straight through the view, but also your wings are vibrating from your back. It's currently at the Sundance Festival, where it's getting a lot of excellent reviews. It's currently a 3-hour queue to go and watch this.
Well done, dudes. What a show! What a show! Unbelievable! That's very clever. Amazing.
You know that?
Is that funny? Got
really good. And the sand with it as well, and the thumping on your pack.
So it was first shown in Brycedale Forest, and that's where that footage was just. Okay, so that's Project Daedalus through the medium of video for everyone. We're going to do Q&A after both of our talks, so I'll hand over.
Thanks so much, Hannah.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everyone. Just to switch gears a little bit, we're going to move from the realm of public engagement in terms of drones and bringing drones to people directly to more of a scientific engineering aspect, but also has something that's very important to each and every one of us every day, and that is the potential to use drones to monitor environmental impacts. So first and foremost, climate change. We know that human beings and things we do produce lots and lots of emissions. And we're worried mostly historically about CO2, but as we realize now, more and more of our activities actually produce other gases. And why are we interested in other gases? Well, gases like methane, other hydrocarbons, have global warming forcing factors that are orders of magnitude greater. 20, 100, 200, 1,000 times. We have a much, much worse grasp on how that works. At the same time, those activities produce air pollution. Now, if you walk around the streets of any major city in the Western world, or in this case, Beijing, you can see some of that air pollution. But one of the effects of that air pollution is it produces small particulate matter. And this small particulate matter, on the order of 2.5 microns or less, gets deep in your lungs. It remains there. It causes in the UK about 1,200 to 1,500 deaths, premature deaths a year. In the US, it's about 12,000. Worldwide, it's over 1 million people a year die. And we do modeling to try to see what these effects are. But that modeling is on the scale of 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer or greater, a kilometer in depth in the atmosphere. It doesn't work at all in a city like Manchester. So what can affect me if I walk down Oxford Road and the buses go by, I walk one street off, that might have no effect at all. But we don't know that. So we can use UAVs to look at both the sources of pollution, a landfill, a gas well, a farm on the micro scale, and we can look at the UAVs to look at the effects of that pollution, what it affects on human health on that micro scale. So what I brought here today are a couple of the UAVs we use for this purpose. And one of the things we've done is we looked at these emissions. So the Environment Agency commissioned us about 2 years ago now to study the use of UAVs on licensed sites. And what you're seeing here is a picture of a landfill up in Bury, Hollingsworth. It has the distinction for the company that operates it of being probably their most problematic landfill in terms of things. But what we have is on the north side of the site, which is on the left of this screen, is a capped and closed landfill. So we should be seeing almost no emissions from that landfill. And on the south side of the site is an active landfill. They are currently adding waste to this landfill. And one of the things we know about landfills is that most of that waste is actually biodegradable. It doesn't degrade very quickly or very well, but even things like plastic degrade over time. And they degrade in an anaerobic fashion, so they release methane and CO2. But methane is what we're really worried about. Unfortunately, while the UK has an obligation to reduce our methane emissions, we really have no idea how much methane we produce. What we do currently is we require every landfill operator that's operating the landfill today, once a year, to hire a very, very expensive truck to sit around the landfill and do a LiDAR scan. And we get estimates of the methane emissions within about an order of magnitude. And it costs them between 10 and 100,000 pounds to survey their landfill every year. And the Environment Agency wants to bring that down. They want it to be 5,000 pounds, 1,000 pounds. They want to be able to hire someone like you all to go out on an afternoon on a nice sunny day instead of a cold, windy, rainy day and measure. They want to do it with something ultimately this big. You can put it in a backpack, weighs about 2.5 kilos. Fly it around and measure that. Unfortunately, We're not there yet. We're something about 5 times the size of that. Show it to you. So what we've done is we've developed that little aircraft on the top right. And it's an aircraft that you can buy. You can go out, if you have about 500 pounds, you can call up Franz Bormuth in Germany, and he will send you that aircraft. And it flies reasonably well. It's a nice little aircraft, about 7 kilos maximum weight. And then what you can do is you can put about 10,000 pounds worth of equipment on board. And what that is there's a little sensor at the top. It's about yay big. And another sensor there that measures airflow and CO2 and methane and the like. And then you can grab one of these, which is based on a DJI platform, and figure out what the relationship between CO2 and methane on the landfill is. And you can fly around that landfill, and I can estimate how much methane it's emitting at any one time. And I can do it 3 or 4 times a year, and I get a pretty good estimation of what it does over the course of the year. Well, that's all well and good, but if I'm a landfill operator, I'd like to be able to do that every day. I'd like to be able to do that without any concern of what the weather's like, what's going on, or if that 10,000 pounds of equipment crashes on the landfill, gets run over by a bulldozer and gets smashed, it takes 6 months to get the parts to get a new one. I don't want to worry about that. I want something that's a couple $100, and I can use that. So that's what we're working on. This is great because it's tethered. Uses 400 volts DC. You hook it up to either mains electricity or generator. I can fly it up. I can have it measure overnight in situ while no one's there. Maybe, if it doesn't crash. They do tend to do that, fall out of the sky occasionally. We don't know how good these motors are. They last for 5 or 10 hours at least, but no one's really ever tested them. Typical flight time for a small multi-rotor, 5 to 15 minutes. 2 hours plus is one of these things. Anybody can do it. If you stick your hand on it at the right time, you'll give yourself a lethal shock. But it's not infeasible. Anyone here with a good electrical background, electronics background can build that before. So it's really accessible, really easy, relatively cheap to do. When we're done, we've got some of the sensors that we're using on this small one. I mean, this is the size. These sensors, they come from human health monitoring, things like portable air quality sensors, and like 100-pound each, 200 pounds of airplane. Okay, so what we did is we flew this on a landfill, and you were talking about risk assessments. One of the biggest risk assessments we had to figure out were snakes. There were adders potentially there, and they're worried about snakes. And then I mentioned that I grew up in a town where we had eastern diamondback rattlesnakes, copperheads, water moccasins, timber rattlesnakes. And the guy said, you'll be fine. If you get bitten, you know what to do. I said, no, actually, I don't. I've never been bitten by a venomous snake. But it's pretty easy, straightforward thing to do. Let's see if the video works. What this does is it carries it 1/8 inch altitude to about 70 meters per second. We're good. 10, 11, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. It goes on for this for quite a while if we were to not crop the video, but nice. 25. We have people approaching. So that's basically all it does. It's extremely boring. Unfortunately, under the law, we have to have someone flying it all the time. So you have to sit there and watch this constantly. It is tethered, so we are actually beginning to talk to CAA about being able to set these up with lights and leave them. Because it's on a landfill, it's a closed site. If you're there, you're not supposed to be there. You're probably already going to get in trouble. And then leave these overnight or like doing flights. So that is basically it. But just one of the other options we can do for using UAVs and drones in day-to-day work. And the ultimate goal is that we'll be able to get resolutions down to the block, street level, the building level, cities. Combine that with CFD modeling, be able to tell you in real time, say if you're riding your bike, where's the safest place for you to ride in terms of the air you breathe or the local conditions you have. Okay. Thank you.
I just wondered if about using spectroscopic methods of actually following things like pollution fumes.
Yep.
That's where basically you get absorption because of chemical compounds. So in other words, if you have, say, a light source on the ground tracking the drone, you'd actually be able to form a view as to where the plume is coming from.
So,
because most landfill sites, of course, are capped. They're supposed to be capped with an impermeable layer like clay, so it follows that if you're getting pollution, that there's a defect in your capping.
yeah. So there's two things we're looking at there. One is what we call in situ flux measurements, and the other is the spectral for remote sensing. So we're working on now is actually placing the spectral measurements on a multi-rotor of that sort, so that once we figure out if there is an issue, we can measure the bulk, we can identify if there's a leak. In the case of Pillsworth, most of our work's on the active site.
Yeah.
So it's kind of pointless to look for a plume because it is a plume.
Yeah.
You can't cap something that's
It's
open.
still
and maybe,
it's open to the sky until it's closed.
Pillsworth North, which actually shows almost no emissions.
Yeah.
I mean, we basically know where they are. They're all wellheads. So we're not particularly worried about that. But that's really useful if you have natural gas drilling or extraction, because you get fugitive emissions. And when you look at an area, you know that there are fugitive emissions, and you can look at that. Part of the problem with a lot of the long spectral stuff is the power and weight requirements are still quite high.
Yeah.
But for the closed loop stuff where you're flying through, it's becoming much, much more accessible.
So I imagine there's different types of emission and quantity of emission around the site. Is it purely government legislation or regulation that's limiting you to the way you fly that drone in terms of, because it's limiting the data which you collect? Because I imagine there's different quantities of this stuff due to the complex weather patterns at different heights and collecting at different heights and moving again at different heights.
There are some restrictions in terms of operating height or where we operate. It turns out government regulations are probably not our biggest problem. Our biggest problem is actually the industry. They're very reticent to have something with a high energy battery flying on a site where if it crashes at the wrong point, it can easily start a landfill fire. And, you know, overrunning your emissions may cost you a few £100,000. Having a landfill fire is going to cost you a few million, tens of millions potentially in fines and issues. But, you know, the great thing about it is we've been working with one of the providers, and we've had drones come down on the landfill, never had a problem. It's not an issue. The other one is health and safety. This is an industry, landfill industry has a really uncanny habit of killing their employees, so we don't like it if we do. But the fact of the matter is, on a landfill, you're far more likely to be run over by a lorry or a bulldozer than you are to have a drone drop on your head, even if they're flying above you. The impact area of that's relatively small compared to a lorry. So one's paying attention to what they do.
How do the drones Sorry.
Yeah.
How do the drones perform in certain weather conditions like wind?
So the day that video was taken, we were getting about 20 knot winds, or 20 mile an hour winds. We can fly some of the stuff in up to about 25 miles an hour. Just depends on gusts. The bigger problem is rain. They don't like rain, especially high voltage DC doesn't like rain. But the control computers really don't like rain, and they do strange things on you when it rains. But that's all solvable. It's just a matter of hardening it.
So
Pilots don't like rain too.
why do they control computers in the backup? Because basically they're inevitable to see them again.
Yeah, they're just not designed for it. I mean, and these are all prototypes. So you know, I'd rather wait for a nice day. Thank you very much. It's amazing when it's about 0 degrees. A lot of glue you buy doesn't work very well either.
Lots of what?
Glue adhesives, they just tend to fail at 0 degrees for some reason. So when we were out on Hollingsworth in November, it was about 0 up there, and things were coming apart, but don't normally come apart.
In terms of energy consumption, how much limitation does it give to the drone itself? Like, say, different weathers and different circumstances, like how long would it take to charge, or how long would it?
Well, if we fly this battery powered, and this one we don't fly battery powered because it's a very high voltage system, we can get about 15 minutes of flight, and then it takes you half hour, 45 minutes to charge that battery again. This one, because it's connected to a generator or mains power, you can fly it until you run out of petrol or you run out of money.
It's connected whilst it's flying.
Yeah. So I don't have the tether in the ground station, but it's a fine tether. It weighs about, about a gram a meter in length. It's very light, and it connects that to the ground. And you just plug it into the wall.
And in terms of safety, isn't that very dangerous, or how do you
Well,
overcome that problem?
yeah, two things with safety. The tether itself, you can handle it. It's fully sealed. It's the issue with safety is actually this head and these capacitors. As long as you stay from there, you're fine. But we do it in a close spot. So if it were to drop out of the sky, we have control over the site. So we're not doing it in the center of Manchester with people around. Yes.
With regards to tethering it, and power consumption, if you got authorization to leave it up for times with the lights on, as you mentioned, would it be possible, how would you shield it from the weather and still keep it light enough to fly?
Oh.
And is it possible to use the heat from the where you are, essentially, to power it thermoelectrically?
No, there's not enough heat in the area where we already do thermoelectric. The potential's not high enough. I mean, most landfills actually have electric generation on the site, so we could power it from the landfill. Yeah, Hollingsworth does. In fact, they've just installed in addition to their gas engines that they use to generate electricity, they're now doing chilling nitrogen and using that to store energy to then run it. To protect it from the weather, we just have to design a waterproof case and heat exchanger for that. It's not particularly difficult.
And if you do get it to the point where you can put it up and leave it, and then the weather comes in, whether that's winds that are too strong for it, are you finding some sort of system where it will automatically land itself, or just cut off to isolate it?
Yeah, so we would set it up in that case where if there were parameters, wind speed. In this case, we'd measure wind speed in terms of you can have a sight on the ground or in terms of angle. Once it reaches certain things, it just sends a flight termination, and it will just land. It's not one of those. It's mission termination versus flight termination. Flight termination is turn off, fall out of the sky. That's safer than being out there, and then kills the tower. Do that.
What has been the government or industry response to your research?
In what respect? In terms of regulation?
Is the government doing anything about it, or are they doing anything with this data in terms of making changes? Is there other projects like this in order to combat, as to say methane emission?
Well, in the work we showed there on Hollingsworth, the Environment Agency is actually writing some, I wouldn't call it draft policy because the technology is not there yet, but they're writing position that where they think the future of the policy will be. And it looks like if the technology progresses as we anticipate, in about 5 years, that will probably become the default means of measuring emissions. Some sort of remote sensing or in situ sensing using UAVs. Not necessarily the specific technology that we've used today, because we think that's probably going to get supplanted by something else. But instead of the dial system.
So this is the future.
Yes.
I guess similar questions that you've been asked about the how long it takes you to use the drone. In your case, Anna, is it similar? Because I believe it's different users. Because from the creating side of views, you probably need to have the drones that last a bit longer in order to create a production.
Yeah, so in terms of as a producer, you have to really think about flight times. So when you're planning things like a photo shoot, you need to plan in advance what all your shots are going to be because you don't have time to reshoot things because you've only got so much battery power. Most people work with DJI Phantoms, so that's more or less the industry standard for creative work when you're using them, and obviously GoPros. We were using, I'll say to you guys, it was the Hero 3s we were using because they sync best for the 360 stuff rather than the Hero 4s, they're not quite there yet. But in terms of, as a producer, you've got to really think how long it's going to take, and some shots you might have to shoot one way and then reverse it in post-production. So for example, if you wanted a shot coming from far away and then going through a door, it's easier to shoot that from the door and flying out of it and then reverse the shot. So thinking about that has to be very practical, and if you've only got 12 minutes to get a certain shot, then you need to be really sure you know how you want the shot positioned. You need that person there and you need that person there. You can't mess around, so yeah, it's quite precious flight times, and it's a real constraint and something that when you're workshopping with other people in terms of outreach, they find it quite hard to get their heads around. So you can get quite stuck in terms of the amount of footage you get sometimes when they don't realise, oh, well, you've got no battery now, no, you've got to wait 45 minutes. Yeah.
With regards to licensing, I know in America, the FAA said that they all need to be registered and licensed. Is there anything like that over here where we need to look to?
Yeah, so that's the CAA stuff you must deal with them all the time.
Yeah, so as of now, there's no registration requirements for the actual vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
The CAA takes the opinion that if you are flying for recreational purposes, educational purposes, which is a lot of what you've done, that you don't need a license to operate.
You do if you're shooting film though, so
yes.
In my position.
If you're doing anything for valuable consideration,
mm-hmm.
which they won't fully define, you need what's called a permission for aerial work. And if you go on you go on the CAA's website, you can find out there are 150 something companies and organizations with permissions for aerial work right now. It's not horribly onerous to get, but it'll cost someone a few £1,000s in terms of courses and testing. And then an organization gets it, it's a couple £100 a year to maintain it. We operate because we're doing education and research and development and not actually doing this. We're not doing it to collect the data, we're doing it to develop the tools. We don't need it for most of what we do, but at the moment we would go out and actually go to a landfill operator or a petroleum site and start collecting information for them. We require that certification.
Yeah, so for me, when I'm advising arts and cultural organisations, I would recommend that they go through someone that's got that accreditation. As part of our team, we have people that are accredited pilots. Ways of getting around it, which is kind of a dodgy way to put it, but for example, when I was doing the flying in Denmark, I took out British Model Aircraft Association insurance, which is only I think it cost me £40, but it meant that I was covered if something went wrong and I knocked into someone. So I was only flying the little tiny things. But the tricky thing when you're in the arts is when you shoot something that may not be for a commercial purpose to start with, and then become something for a commercial agency afterwards. So it might be that you've shot it for an educational reason, like I might have done with some of them. But then then it's in Sundance. So at what point does that become a commercial enterprise? It's quite a tricky question within my sector.
And you can ask the CAA. It may be a while before you get a response because they've got 2 people working UAVs and hundreds of people asking questions every day. And they are reticent to give straight answers, partly because the guys that are doing this don't want to kind of close off things. They still want it to be open. So I was at a meeting last week and they were discussing, because it said, oh, you can fly drones indoors, no regulations. Well, there's actually some people at the CAA that say, believe it or not, the air navigation order applies inside as well as outside, because there's no stipulation in the overseeing legislation that says that that there's an area that just says in the air. So the CAA is not even sure where it applies or doesn't apply.
I've always
So the law is not actually caught up with reality.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I don't think the law has ever caught up with reality.
Yeah, exactly. It's nowhere near it. At the moment, it's more of a seek forgiveness rather than permission.
And the fact is, if you don't do something stupid, they're not going to come after you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's got to be grossly negligent or stupid, yeah.
Yeah, but if you
just conspicuous, don't fly over a football stadium, just basic stuff like that.
If you fly in London and you cause them to shut Heathrow down, they're going to really come after you because A, you're not supposed to fly in London, B, you shut Heathrow down, and C, so the CAA will come after you, and then the airlines in Heathrow are going to come after you for the tune of about £15 million. Because that's what, if they shut Frew down for 5 to 10 minutes, they can't recover. And that's the loss, the direct cash loss they will incur from that day. So,
and that has happened before last year.
Yeah, they don't know who it is. So they haven't been able to find them. But as soon as they do, they've got the losses.
They did find a guy at Cumbria flying close to BA Systems nuclear submarine site.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
And he was fined as well.
Yeah, that's not good because the nuclear people are even more likely to come in your house. Nuclear. By the way, the nuclear police can enter your house at any time without a warrant. They have far more powers than any other police group in the UK. So do not fly near a nuclear power plant or a nuclear submarine manufacturing facility or false land or any of those places without explicit permission ahead of time.
On this question of greenhouse gas emissions, most landfill sites that are closed but generating electrical power, as I understand it, is that they keep a negative pressure within the decomposing landfill, so that any leakage that there is should be inwards rather than outwards. The problem really arises when you've got a largely digested landfill where it's no longer economic to generate electrical power, at which point, of course, you've got it's a liability, it's money to keep the thing at negative pressure.
Yeah, so the challenge with closed sites isn't the ones that are, in a sense, known being operated. It's the ones that are
producing, generating,
or even the ones that are still owned by a known operator. A large percentage of the closed sites are operators that no longer exist. Yeah. They just kind of abandoned, and those are the ones that they have no. In fact, they don't even know where all of them are.
Yeah.
In the case of the Environment Agency right now, they're not actively worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
They are more just trying to get an idea of what the active sites are producing. It's companies like Viridor and the other waste management companies on their closed sites they're actively using and extracting. They want to know if they're losing money there because it's losing money.
Sure. I just need to ask, why take the research to the UK? I mean, coming from the transport industry, I'm not saying we're like the most backward country, but we're definitely not the most advanced. So why not do it somewhere where the government's a bit more open-minded about it, like Denmark, Holland, and you can go there and do it, and then perhaps come back and then present the project here to the government, where if it's been done in such countries where they're so advanced in technological terms, then perhaps listen instead of just trying to just avoid their policies.
Well, there's two levels. One nice thing about the UK is the UK actually turns out to be one of the most liberal countries in terms of UAV operations in the world. To fly a UAV legally in the Netherlands, you have to get the place you're operating declared an airport. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to go out to a park and fly one of these things under the law in the Netherlands, you have to go through the permission and get from, I don't know what the Dutch equivalent of the CAA is, that you have a temporary airport.
Without flashing one letter.
Yeah, but some recognized model flying sites in the Netherlands are already under that. So the CAA doesn't care about that. The U.S., where everything's a bit backwards thanks to Congress, it was a very easy place to operate. And then the Congress passed a law that said by, 2012 or 14, they have to come up with regulations for UAVs in the national airspace. And that meant anything from this all the way up to, multi-ton, like Global Hawks and the like. And the FAA went, oh crap, now we actually have to regulate all this other stuff. Oh, we can't do it now, because they have to write policy. And then there are countries that UAVs don't exist. And there aren't UAVs and drones. According to the law, they don't exist. So they just kind of go, and you can do whatever you want. And then there are countries where you just can't fly them. They're just illegal. And so the UK, it turns out, is an amazingly great place to fly and operate these things. That's separate from what you use the data from and all of that and policy there. But yeah, it is a great place. The laws are the CAA is receptive.
So thanks so much for both of you, and thank you all of you guys coming as well.